So I'm just going to start blocking out some basic shapes of kind of where I want things to go. And one of the good brushes I use is a clay brush. I find it the clay builder brush really does just kind of like, it allows you to have that sort of free. Oh, that's why. There we go. Yeah. All right. So there we go. All right, we're going. Good. Cool. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to make it kind of more into a shape I like. We can see it's you know, looking at the topology, it's got something good I can kind of work with. It's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give us a rough shape of where I want to be. I'm going to start off as low as possible. So something like this would be great to start blocking out some shapes. So I'm just going to start hacking away into it and see what kind of stuff I get from it, into a rough sort of tree-like shape. And I'm just going to use the clear brush and the smooth brush to kind of start building up some of these shapes we have here. Like I said, we're going to fill really fast here. We're going to start off with something, and we're going to pull it back, and we're going to iterate, and we're going to keep going until I have something roughly about the shape I like. So I really want it to come out a bit more at the bottom. And at this point, I'll step up in iteration, so I got a little bit more topology. Now, it's really important not to go too high too quickly, otherwise you'll end up a little bit messy. Zbrush works really well when you start going up and down the layers as much as possible. And I can see this is turning into a little bit of a phallic shape, so I'm just going to pull this back a bit. There's going to be a lot of this, I'm sure. It's probably a little bit too strong for my liking. Okay. Step it up another iteration now. So I'm starting to get a little bit of a feel as to where I want some of this to come out, and I've turned on symmetry just to kind of build up some of these roots coming out of here. So I really want one of these shapes to come out a little bit more. Something like that. So in my design, I have an area where there's going to be a face. So I'm just going to maybe make that a little bit longer now. Sorry if I sound a bit graspy, by the way, I'm not used to talking for so long. So we're kind of getting something that looks a little bit like a kind of a rough tree shape now, or at least a stump. And I really want this to kind of be like an evil stump anyway, so I'm not looking for anything too clean, just nice big brush strokes. I'm going to now just pull that in a little bit so it's a bit more flush to the floor, just to work with a little bit nicer. That's a little bit taller. Something like that. It's kind of, it's getting there. Still just using the clear brush with a nice square brush. I find working with the square brush works just for me. It's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people like round brushes, some people like soft brushes. But I'm just trying to get something in as fast as possible. And now I'm going to step up the iteration again and just trying to work on some of these finer details. This Wacom pen is really sensitive as well. I just like to point that out. So excuse any of the stuff that I shouldn't be doing. So I think that's. I think I'm getting a little bit happy now with my results. I think this is the kind of the main area where I want my face to be. So I'm gonna make a little mark where I'm gonna decide to put my face, and I'm gonna have it coming all the way down the trunk, and I'm gonna try and embed it, almost like the face is gonna be coming out of the tree. I want it to really kind of match in with some of these lines. And I'm just going to swap to the dam brush. Now the great thing about the dam brush is that it's really good for picking out details. You can get some really nice crevices, and also when you use it in inverse, you get some really nice kind of like pinched sharp edges as well. It's not sharp enough now. So pull that in. Alright, so I've decided that's where my face is going to go. We're kind of getting a bit of a tree shape. Nothing too special, nothing too fantastic. I think we need some more around this other side, so I'm just going to have some clear up in there. I mean, I'm only 5 minutes in, so let's not be too precious with what's going in. Some loose broad strokes. Something like that. So one of the things that I really wanted to do as well on this is have some roots and stuff like that. So just while I'm doing this, because I'm not happy with how big the top is, I want it to be a little bit bigger, so I'm just going to inflate this out a bit. Again, nothing too precious, just kind of trying to get a really rough, smooth shape in there. Something like that. Yep, it looks like crap, but we'll see where it goes. I'm just going to use the flatten brush now to take off some of the top, because we'll get to that later. So now we're getting there. Something like that. So for the roots, I'm going to try and use some Z-spheres. I find Z-spheres a wonderful a way of getting quick geometry in there as fast as possible. So I'm just going to go ahead and append a Z-sphere in, and that's going to give me something to work with wherever it's gone. It's in there somewhere. Cool. Just get that one. So with Z-spheres, you can really just kind of like get rough, loose shapes in it, and these are going to work really well for the roots. And you can just kind of like place them on and draw another one and move it out. Probably not take that one with this. And I think I'm going to have another one there, which is going to separate off the root. I'm going to have one coming off the side here, something like that. Maybe something like that. I'm not happy with the size of that, so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, something like that. Add another one in there, move that around, and notice how like none of this is precious. I'm just chucking it in and I'm seeing what results I get. I'm not too bothered about the ground floor, I'm not too bothered about the topology, nothing. I'm just trying to get something in as fast as possible to see where I can take this. Just for good measure. This is what happens when you have a big brush. Cool. Something like that. So for all intents and purposes, that's a root. It's not perfect. Hey, come on. So what I'm going to do now is, if you press A, you can see what the kind of geometry is going to be. Obviously, if I had more time, I'd do more roots. It would be more interesting, but at least we're going to have one root to kind of work off of what we're going to see here. So I'm just going to go ahead now, and I'm going to make that make Edit Poly 3D. And I'm just going to come back to my original 2. I didn't mean to do that twice now. And I'm just going to delete that one out, and I'm just going to append my newly created geometry in there now. So now we have a nice bit of geometry we can work from in terms of roots. Now, I'm going to show you a way of combining meshes and having them all the same mesh while also using different meshes at the same time. So you could, at this point, I would probably go ahead and add the clear bump brush in again. Now I wanted to get this root to kind of follow going up this side here, because I wanted it to be part of the tree and I wanted it to really look like it's coming out of the tree and forming this kind of root. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of some detail in there. Let's see what we got here. Maybe use the blob brush, and maybe use a bit of a color spatter. So you can get some, just a little bit of something. Nothing too cool. So now we kind of have the basics of what a root might look like. And because I wanted to follow the ground plane, I'm just going to go ahead and use one of the move tools, either the move elastic or just the normal one. And I'm just going to go ahead and pull some of this up because I'm going to flatten it all off. They're quite thin at the moment, so I might go ahead and just inflate them a little bit, especially around this area. Get a little bit gnarly stuff going on. A little bit more here as well. Cool. So I'm going to put in another iteration, and we can start adding a little bit more detail now to this subtool. I'm going to be going along and telling shortcuts as well, so one of the things I didn't know about for quite some time when I was using Zbrush is if you hold Alt and click on the thing, it stops the subtool. I don't know how many people know that, but I lost my shit when I realized, because it saves me so much time. So I'm just going to go ahead now and start adding some extra details into this. So now I'm going to step up again. We're starting to get a little bit of some nice high poly stuff going on here. It's not crazy poly, but it's enough to start working in and adding some details. So I'm just going to take away some of this stuff now. I'm going to bring out this one. I'm going to push this back. I find the dam tool is really good for doing for building up detail in terms of if you use it normally, you get a really nice inset, and if you use the alt, you get like a really nice, quite sharp line as well, and that's really great for stuff like cloth. And it gives you a nice kind of fine edge. So I'm just going to go ahead and shrink my brush a bit, and I'm going to apply that same standard around the top here because this is where I want the top of my tree to be. I'm just going to try and make it a bit more gnarly. See what happens. I'm going to just push that down a bit. That's going to be my inset. So back to the clay builder brush. I'm not happy with how that looks. I'm going to push that down. So I really want it to inset into a little bit like the bark has kept growing or has kind of rotted away from the inside a little bit. I'm just going to smooth that out a bit, and we'll take it from there when I go up the next iteration. So, not too happy with how this shape is right now, so I'm just going to quickly make some amendments to this. I mean, what we could do as well, if we wanted to, we can take this and just for now we can duplicate it, and I'm just going to quickly move it. I'm going to step down the subdivisions, and because it always makes it easier when you're working with low resolution meshes to transform it and not lose your high detail. If you start moving things when you've got a high detail mesh, it will start folding in on itself and doing some interesting stuff. So if you can, always work at the lowest resolution to build up your shape and build up your block out, and just really use that to then drive the rest of the detail on top. So I'm just gonna play around with this. I'm gonna maybe use whoops, wrong way. Just gonna pull that in a bit so we have the roots kind of coming down on this side as well. And I'm not happy with that, so I'm just going to do that. Soften off the mask, invert it, and maybe use. Let's see what happens when we pull this out a bit. Let's just take some of that off. I think I'll be a little more free with this, so I'm going to use the spiral brush, and I'm just going to. Now this one always catches me out because it goes different ways depending on your brush stroke. So that one goes that way, that one goes that way. Yeah, something like that. Oh, too much. Cool. So already, just by duplicating the thing, we've got two very different shapes. And we can go back up. Whoops. We can go back up there. Just one more final thing. I'm just going to bring that back down to roughly where my ground plane is. Something like that. I really want this going up the side now. Maybe give it a bit of a curve, because curves are nice. Cool. Something like that. So I'm gonna concentrate on this side, and I'm not really going to do the back, but you'll get the rough idea of where things go. So already we're starting to get a kind of a tree-like shape. No face yet, but we'll get to that eventually. And I think it would be really good now to take what we have now and then make this all one mesh, so we can sculpt in it really nicely. So with all this in mind, I want to be able to make this all one mesh now. It's still quite low poly, like in terms of everything. It's only 300,000. So I'm just going to go down here and I'm going to go remesh, and I'm going to turn symmetry off, and I'm going to do a remesh, and that's going to do like a cage around the entire thing. And more importantly, what it's going to do is it's going to even out my subdivisions. So before, when I started off with the cylinder, I didn't have much subdivisions up here because it was a capped. The top surface was just triangulated. There was no subdivisions. And likewise with the Z spheres, like there wasn't much even surface between the spheres. But now when you do a remesh, you've got like a nice, solid, even canvas to work on. And what you can do from there is if you just go down to project, you can project all, and it usually helps if I'm on the right subtool. You can project all that information on that new one back to your old one. Now it didn't come out quite exactly how I wanted it to, so I'm just gonna softly smooth it so it softens everything out a bit, and it pulls all the things that it missed a bit more uniformly in towards each other, like so. And I'm just going to project it again. Maybe I need to change these settings, perhaps the distance of the shells. This isn't an exact science by any means. It's just changing the settings to kind of see what results you get. So that kind of came out all right. There's a few little things, so we'll just try and fix that now. Oh god, it really didn't like the back. Oops. So what I tend to find in this instance, this is the problem. So the projection mesh was going inside of the other subtool. Now you could play around with some of these, like you could say just go to the outer surface, But in these instances, what I find really handy to do is just kind of like find where it's having issues and just kind of sculpt it a little bit closer to the higher geometry which you're projecting onto. And just kind of bring it a little bit closer so it has not as many problems, shall we say. So I'll just smooth that out again, give it a project. And it's not perfect, but you know what? I'm fine with that. It's given me actually some nice details by accident. So I'm fine with that, actually. Yeah, let's go with that. Let's just use the brush now to even some of that out. Got some gnarly things. And now I can step up the resolution again, and voila, we have one uniformed subtool now, which I can now really sculpt those roots that we created beforehand into it and make it feel like it's actually just all one nice organic shape rather than separate subtools. Something like that. It's looking a little lonely around the back. I kind of feel like I need to do something, so I'm just going to step it down a little bit. Now, it's not a very low resolution mesh, this, I must admit, but for this instance, it should be fine. What I might try doing in this instance is maybe going to geometry and reconstruct subdivisions, and that might... No. If the mesh is all chords and it's a nice mesh, that should just work, and it'll give you an even lower res mesh. There's different ways of doing it, but I think this is fine to work with now. So I've got a good 15,000 polygons where I can start stepping this up even more now to add some of the detail in. As a result, I no longer need these, so I'm just going to delete these out. Cool. So it's starting to get there. We're starting to get a bit of a tree sort of shape. It's a bit gnarly. I'm not happy with some of this, so I'm just going to go in and I'm going to move some of it. It's a very weedy looking tree, so I'm going to step down to the low subdivision, and I'm just going to use the move tool, the move elastic tool, to just kind of pull some of this out because I want some depth to it. I want to really make it feel like it's a thick, old kind of trunk of a tree. And it's a bit of a weird shape around the back, so pull this a bit. Again, not being precious, if anything but just long, big strokes as much as you can. Because I've made it wider, it's now no longer got the height I need. So I'm just going to pull that up, and as you can see, like I just did it by accident, but I really quite like now how that's on an angle. I think that I could potentially add quite a nice shape of things. So I'm just going to go back to my other brush, my clear build-up brush, and I'm just going to take this in a little bit. And just pull some of this out, push it in a bit more. Now we're not concentrating on on the wood texture yet. We're not concentrating on any of the fine details. Just thinking about how we can use these shapes to our advantage. Still keeping in mind that this is where I want my face to go. So I'm just gonna maybe move this out a bit more. Damn, this is slow. Something that, I guess. Yeah. My tree has an ass. Just, pull that thing in. Okay. Cool, okay. So I think at this point it would be really, really good. In the back of my head, I want this tree to rest on a flat surface. So I'm just going to go ahead, I'm going to build up some of this at the bottom, just so I can take it away, if that makes sense. So I'm going to just do what I did before. I'm going to just move. I added so I can push it back up so it smooths everything out, makes it a bit flat. And what I'm going to do with that in mind is I'm just going to mask off what I don't need, and I'm just going to flatten it in. Oops. Something like that. And I now need to go along and just move my branches a little bit. I honestly thought Zbrush was going to crash on me though. Cool. All right. So now we have it sat nice and firmly on the ground with its nice, it's almost looking comfortable at this point. So it's getting there. So let's start working on some of the main key details now. So what I really, really want is to get some of this gnarly sort of bark definition. And I've got a little bit of it, but I just want to push a little bit more. So I'm just going to use the dam brush to try and bring out some some of these key details, and I really want to get kind of like this weathered, veiny almost look down it. So let's try and pull some of this in and see what happens. Probably working at a higher resolution there. Let's see what happens when I do that. Maybe a little bit of that. Some of that. You can see now I'm starting to get a little bit of stretching, so I'm just going to step up another resolution. And I didn't like how that turned out, so I'm going to, I think I'll use the polish brush and just kind of take some of that down onto a flat edge. There we go. Push some of that in. Okay. Starting to get there. I think we need a little bit more variation as well, so I'm just going to really quickly, I think for this instance I will go back to the blob brush, because it does some cool stuff. I find it, it's usually the blob, and just very gently just kind of use it to define some of this shape a bit more. I think we can turn that up a bit and turn my draw size down and just try to add some of this gnarliness to it. Something like that. Cool. Starting to look a bit more true. So, what I really want now to do is introduce my face to it. Now, I think for this instance I'm going to take something I created before. This isn't something I prepared for this lecture, it's just one of my stock things that I created a while back. And it is a simple skull. Now, I don't know if this is going to work on this version, but we'll find out. If it doesn't, we'll find a way around it. Oh, cool, it did, okay. So I have a skull, something I made a little bit earlier. In fact, I did this when I was at Eurocon. Obviously, you guys would spend time making a skull and making it, you know, nice and whatever. But I've decided that this is the face that I want to have poking out of my tree. It's a skull. So I'm just going to go ahead and find my tree. Not sure why that rotated around. And I'm just going to append in my bits of skull. So one subtool at a time, because I want to keep them separate for now, and I'll show you why. And I'm just going to go ahead and hide that. Okay, cool. So I've got my skull. It's wrong orientation, it's whatever. So for now, I'm just going to merge it down. And yep, that's fine, don't worry. So let's see what we can do with this. Let's pull this over here. Cool. As you can see, I'm just using the standard move tools to get this roughly in the place that I want it to be. No, probably not on an angle just yet. So using the shift key to snap in the orientation. Let's have it something like that. Let's scale this bad boy up. Something kind of along those lines. Now what I really want to do is, I think I want the mouth open. There's a couple of ways you can do this. One of the nice ways to do it is if it's a... Oh, that's not good. So my polygroups are screwed, so I'm just going to go to polygroups and go auto groups, and that's going to separate it by elements. And now I've got two polygroups. Now, by default, if I do this, it's going to rotate the entire skull. However, if you come up to here and go brush, auto masking, and there's a thing here, say Masspike Polygroups. And if you turn that to 100, what it means is if you select your, if you draw this on your polygroup, now you can move this individually, which is going to give me a nice bit of control now when I open this guy's mouth, because I think it's going to look really cool if we get a nice kind of skull that's open and looking a bit demonic. So I just need to find the right pivot point to look good. Something like that. Not perfect, but it'll do. It's something. It's something. So let's turn it off. So that's kind of what I'm going for at the moment. Something a bit like that. I could probably push this a bit more to the extreme, so I think I might. So for this instance, again, I want to try and integrate this into the tree as much as possible. So I don't just want a skull slapped on the front, because I don't think that's going to work. What I really want to happen is to kind of look like it's coming out of the tree and sort of embed this in as best I can. So I need to problem solve this a little bit now, because I'm not sure how I'm going to tackle it. So I think first and foremost, I'm not happy with the dimensions. So I'm just gonna turn that off. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. Turn that off. Turn that back on. And I'm just going to scale that in a bit, because I don't think that's going to work to my advantage if I have it full. Just want to move that in a bit. And let's try and follow the orientation perhaps a little bit more of the curvatures I've got. Something like that. Maybe let's try the other way. I liked it better before. So that's kind of something what I'm going to go for. So, right. Not sure how I'm going to do this. I think the best way to do this is perhaps projection. So, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a, maybe it's just a simple plane. Plane 3D. Because I don't want the back of the skull. I don't need the back of the skull. And more importantly, I need a clean mesh. So, I don't want to have stuff on the inside of the mouth. I just want sort of the front of the skull, which I can then pull down and sort of integrate into the rest of the tree. So, where did my plane go? There it is. Naturally, just to be awkward, it's on a different orientation. Jesus, that's annoying. Alright. Oh, close but not so go. So let's get that roughly now where I want it to be. Cool. So this is going to be basically just a something to work off of later on. I'm just going to scale this up a bit so it encompasses my work area. Now there are many different ways we could do this, but I'm just going to try this way. I'm going to trial and error. This might not work, but we'll see. If it doesn't work, we'll find a different way. Cool, okay. So I think for this instance we can use the Matchmaker Brush, which is this one here. And in theory, and this is all theoretically, if I step up some subdivisions, sorry, my tongue. And if I do this, it is going to give us a nice projection of the skull onto the tree. Now this is exactly what I wanted. This worked out a lot better than I thought it was. I know this doesn't look clean, but this is exactly what I wanted to work off of, because now I can really start getting this integrated. And I'm just going to undo that because I realized that I haven't made this long enough. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull this down a bit more, something like that. And I'm just going to check on how my subdivisions are. That all seems pretty good. Alright. So I'm just going to use the Matchmaker Brush again. There we go. I'm just going to do that. Probably even go even bigger. I'm just kind of stamping on the rest of the tree as well. Because it doesn't matter, we're just making big broad strokes. We've got some issues here, so I'm just going to smooth that out. And now we have a little something to work off of. I think I still need to undo all that. Just make it a bit bigger, because I'm not taking into account it's bleeding around the sides. Alright, something like that. Let's not be too precious with this. There we go, alright. So we have a thing now we can work off of, which is my face in a tree on a nice 2D mesh. Now we've got some issues here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask these. I don't really want these pieces because they could cause problems. And I'm just going to show you a way of separating meshes off. There's a few different ways of doing it, but my favourite is to keep it simple, doing the old school way. So if you have a masked face, you can see on here it's all one polygroup. You can just go group masked. So it's going to turn whatever's masked into a separate polygroup. You come up here. You can now select polygroup and go split and group split. And yes, that's fine. So what that's done now is it's given me the mesh and it's given me the separated things. Now it's not perfect. It's screwed up still a little bit. I didn't quite mask those out, so I'm just going to do that again. Polygroups, auto groups, group by mask, sorry. There we go. Has that done it? No, I don't think it did it? Alright, you know what, screw it, doesn't matter. Let's just leave it there. Oh, I know why it's doing it. Doesn't matter. Let's just work around this, and I'm just gonna push it back, and I'm gonna pretend it's not there. There we go. Cool. So we have a thing now we can work off. It's a little bit cleaner. Still some issues, but we can now work around it. So I don't need the skull there anymore because I have my projection there of it. Now, kind of similar to before, it's now two separate subtools. Obviously, with a lot of issues as well. You've got some really problematic stuff here. And usually, I would spend more time making sure that they weren't an issue there in the first place. But for this exercise, I'm just going to push them out the way and hope you guys forget about them. Let's do that. Like I said, there's many different ways we could do this, but I'm just doing the cheap, nasty way for the purpose of this exercise. Again, it's all just like up and down your subdivisions, using the lowest subdivision to do most of your moving, and which will then not screw up your higher definition of the stuff that you've been sculpting. Cool, so that's going to be my rough basis as to where I want the head to come out of. I'm just going to push this a little bit further back. And alternatively, instead of pushing this back, I could have sculpted more on top of the tree, which is what I think I might do, where I might take this. Got one really annoying polygon there. Get back. Oh, for God's sake. Be gone. Oh, the joys of Zbrush. Cool, okay. So we have a kind of a thing we can work off, and I think at this point as well, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm just gonna change. I'm just gonna change my workflow up a little bit. So, like I said, I want to really kind of make it look like this tree is sort of alive, and it's got this kind of like this face coming out of it like a tree of souls. So I'm going to go back to my original model, and I'm just going to build up that area around it. I'm going to use the clay brush again, and I'm going to kind of make a knot where the head is. Start building this up a little bit. Start to get some of this nice kind of tree bark sort of shape in it now. And again, I'm not being precious, I'm just loose strokes, just going with gut feelings more than anything. Just maybe step up another subdivision at this point. Oh, Jesus, this is lagging. If Zbrush crashes, it's not my fault, okay? But it's getting really sluggish, so I can foresee it happening. Anyway, just kind of building up some of this rough shape now. Just adding and subtracting. And I really want to build up some of this area, and I want to make it feel like it's got like an outer bark on it. So I'm just going to build up a bit of an edge around here. And I'm not going to be too precious because I'm going to go along and I'm going to smooth it all out later. At the moment, I'm not too bothered if the mesh is intersecting. You might get a bit of a hard edge when it comes to baking, but at the very end, you could do exactly what I did in the first person, just do a reproject and make it all one mesh, and you can go along and smooth off any particularly nasty edges you have. So there we go. Maybe get a little bit more intensity on there. Slightly bigger brush. Something like that. Take a bit more. Oops, too much. So I'm going to go back to the subtool now, and I'm going to start iterating into this as to why, you know, to my original point where I wanted it to almost look like it's coming out of the bark, like it's almost part of it. So I'm just going to build up some of this stuff with the clay brush, and I feel like I really want it to kind of look like it's coming out from the mouth. So I'm just going to smooth off that area there. I'm going to build up some of this around here, and likewise up here as well. I'm just going to pull that back like that. Smooth some of that off. Maybe take a bit more away. And it's really important not to be precious with your ideas. As you can tell, I'm just doing this as I go. Nothing particularly interesting. Nothing particularly too precious. So we're kind of getting something now. We have a tree with a face, and I'm just going to build up some more of this. It's really sluggish on that subtool. Zbrush is doing a funny thing here, which I've never seen before. It seems to be doing that, whatever the hell that is. Does anyone know if I've turned something on that I shouldn't have turned on? Say again? Subdividing geometry to 4 million quad polygons, even though it's not. I've probably clicked something or pressed a shortcut. I don't know what it's doing. Maybe it's doing macro mesh. Maybe I've got nano. No. Whatever, not important. We'll figure that out when we get to it. Not important. Actually, no, this is going to drive me insane. Let me just. I am going to go up to that. I'm just going to do that. So now we have a Polymesh 3D. I'm still doing that on that as well. Alright. How very unusual. It's 600,000, but for some reason I'm getting a subdividing geometry. Why are you subdividing? Oh, there we go. There we go. See? I don't know what I did. I did something, but I turned on dynamic subdivision. I've never seen this. This must be a Zbrush 7 thing. Dynamesh is really good. I could have done quite a lot of this just using Dynamesh. And what that does is it interactively updates your polygons as you're sculpting it, so you don't end up with stretching. So yeah, we had a problem. I went and looked for the solution. I pressed some buttons, and I got now to where I was, and I can now sculpt away on this and be happy about it. Oh, or at least I thought I could. Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, now I can work a bit more faster. So let's just get some more of this gnarliness in it. I want to take some of this away, smooth some of it out. Why that keeps turning on. So I'm just going to go up another iteration on the skull. So we're now pushing 1 million. Probably don't need it, so I'm just going to go back down one and I'm going to flatten some of this off now. So I'm going to flatten this and smooth some of this out, so it works a bit nicer. So one of the best things about using the clay brush is that you end up with all these kind of like brush strokes. Now I know that kind of looks bad, but what I find is that you end up with nice random shapes that you would have not got normally if you were just using a standard brush. The standard brush tends to be a bit smooth. So it's quite nice to have some of these gnarly marks because it means you can go in and you just end up with shapes that you didn't really think about actually adding in deliberately. Just kind of smooth some of that off. Jesus, it was looking bad. Alright. So we're starting to get a little bit of something. I'm not quite happy with the shape of the skull, so I'm going to try and do a little something. I'm just going to use the Move Elastic brush with quite a nice big brush stroke, and I'm just going to maybe distort the skull a little bit so it looks a bit more interesting. Kind of like something like that. Now it looks a bit more ominous, and that it's actually kind of part of the tree. Not too happy with how the mouth looks, so let's go in with the dam brush, I think, this time. And I'm just going to take some of this away. So I'm going to add more of these marks. A really strong brush. A little bit too much. Too wild. Just using the clay brush again. So already we can see that we're starting to get a little bit of something. As a proof of concept, I think that will be enough to show someone, you know, kind of what you're going for. But how can we take this to the next level now? I think what I want to do is start adding some more interesting shapes down here at the bottom. So it's starting to work for me. I'm not entirely happy, so I'm just going to add maybe a little bit more of this kind of like flowingness to it, if that's even a word. Let's kind of maybe build up that again. Okay. Now, I'm sure there's people in this room who could do this much better and much quicker. But here's a something. So I deleted the subdivisions, so I can't go back down anymore. However, I know that I already had subdivisions, so I can just reconstruct those back in. And using the snake brush. Where is it? There it is. Just going to pull some of this out. Get more of a shape as to what I want. Any questions so far? No? Cool. What thing? I don't know. It seems to come on when I press D, which is usually just the normal divide up and down, but it was turning on dynamic subdivision, which I don't know. The great thing about Zbrush is if you hold Alt over any... Control, sorry. If you hold Control over any button, it tells you exactly what the button does. So yeah, it was telling me that it will dynamically divide as I'm going along, which could be cool. It's just not what I want right now. So okay, back to here. This is starting to look a bit messy around the top now, so I'm going to clean some of this up. How are we doing for time? I've been going for 40 minutes now, and it's starting to kind of look a bit like a tree. Nothing incredible, but it's something. So I'm just going to really quickly just add some more of this kind of tree bark-like nature in here. Just adding, pushing and pulling. nothing too solid. And I will just use the elastic to. I did find that basically the best way to approach ZBrush is to try every brush and just see what it does, get a cube, do some shapes, just see what every brush does. They all work ever so slightly differently, and they all have their perks and downsides. So it's all just finding really what works for you. And especially when it comes to situations where there's no specific right answer or no specific way to do it, you just kind of need to do whatever the job requires. I've got an issue over here, so I'm going to go into this subtool, which I'm trying to select. There we go. And I can see my head's poking out there, so I'm just going to pull that in there. Still got that little bit of rogue mesh. There we go. And I'm not so happy with how the mouth looks. I've also lost a little bit of detail doing the projections. I mean, it was never a very high fidelity mesh to begin with. In terms of sharpness, so I'm just gonna pull some of this in, and again, if I really wanted to spend some time, I would turn this to a Dynamesh and reproject it, so I get like nice clean edge loops in here. There is a button down here in geometry, I think. Let me find it. If you go to modify topology, you can equalize surface area. You can't do it on different subdivisions also. I'm not going to do it now, but if you do find yourself with stretchy things like this, you can click equalize surface area and it'll add some polygons into where it's been stretched, which is nice. But you can only do it on the lower subdivision, so I'd have to class my subdivisions and work on it from there. Because it adds new polygons, I wouldn't be able to get the lowest subdivision back. So I'd be stuck at this high resolution mesh, basically. So that's kind of coming together a bit more now. I think what I would like to do at this point is add maybe it's just a few separate vines. Actually, no, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to quickly tidy up this top a bit more, because I'm not happy with that. And it's going to make things a bit more interesting if I... something like that. Oops, wrong subtool. Just want to square this up a bit more. Not happy with that. Oh dear, too much. I'm just really quickly, almost like just tapping the brush now to try and get a rough, loose shape. Something a bit more organic, a bit more tree-like. For the top, almost like the bark is withered away at the top. I think I went a little bit too wild there, so I'm just going to pull that back. All very in and out, all very kind of like going up and down, smooth that out, go up again, smooth it, and now it's sort of it's formed in quite nicely. I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to flatten off the center, just so I have a little bit of a hard edge. Holding the Alt tab, trying to bring that up to a reasonable level. So that's looking nice and flat. Something like that. So you can see that was kind of like where the tree was, and then it's kind of like rotted away a little bit in the inside. And it was a little bit too deep for my liking as well. So just using the pinch brush now. I don't know why I... Yeah, okay. Oh, too wild. Just using the pinch brush. I'm just going to pinch that a bit. Something like that. Yeah, cool. I like that. Let's add a little bit more. And I think I'll harden that up a bit. And same here as well. Just get like a bit of a sharper edge there. Why not? I think what I really want is a nice big knot. So I'm gonna use clay brush. I'm gonna use the spray, a knot of an alpha, and I think I'm gonna put a nice big knot here. A knot on a tree. That's probably a bit too much, and that's probably a bit too disfigured. So let's. Whoa. Sorry. Go down and smooth that out. Add a bit more there. Smooth it out. Yep, it's kind of a shape I want. A little bit too much there, so go back to brush, take this out. Cool. Okay. And again, it's become a little bit noisy down here, so I'm just going to try a different brush. I'm going to go to planar. When I find it, no, that's polish. Planar. And I'm just going to use this to flatten out my bottom a little bit, just so it's nice and flush, so we've got a nice kind of surface to work on. So just something like that. And hopefully that hasn't screwed everything up, but it has. So what I'm going to do now is show you another nice little masking feature. Is if you come to brush, and similar to the auto masking stuff, just an auto masking. This saved my life so many times. I struggled with back faces so much, where you'd end up sculpting onto the other side of things. So if you just go down here and go to brush, you can go back face mask, and with this on full, I should, in theory, be able to push this in now, and it won't affect anything on the back faces. Yeah, how useful is that? And same with here, I'm using it in inverse now to try and pull some of that up to the level so it's nice and flat. So there we go, and flatten that out. That's kind of worked. I kind of like that. That's a nice flat thing. See, it's done some crazy stuff down here, so I'm just going to smooth that out. Now, I would argue that this is probably a little bit too smooth in terms of geometry, but it's fine for this exercise. I'm just going to... See, I keep changing my mind with this. I quite like it deep, and then I realise it's not deep enough, and I pull it back, so I'm just going to push that back down a little bit more. Try not to have that little nasty bit there, and I'm just going to planar that bit, like that. There we go. Something like that. Cool. So now we have like a bit of a tree of sorts. What I really want to do, just for something as well, I'm going to add a few vines using a different kind of brush now. So I've only done this a few times, so bear with me. I am going to on this one, I'm going to come up here, and I think R7 has a curve line tube. And in theory, I should just be able to insert this as a multi-mesh, but it's going to ask me, yep, that's fine. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to now duplicate this mesh. So I'm not going to affect my original one, just so basically I've got a copy of it. And because you can't insert multi-meshes on meshes with subdivisions, I'm just going to, for this instance, because I made a duplicate of it, I'm just going to delete this lower subdivisions. And what this is going to allow me to do now is draw on this with a curve, which, no, that's the wrong one, sorry. I want this one, curve multitube. And this is going to allow me to draw a curve really nice and just where I want to go, and that's going to insert a nice little, a veiny kind of line. And I should be able to just draw a couple of these on. See, that didn't work very well. Let's see what happens when I do that. Yep, it's kind of added onto there, and I feel like moving this one a little bit. Again, nothing too precious, just because I'm going to go in and edit these afterwards, so I'm just going to add a little one up there as well. Something like that. I can move it around afterwards. Or I'll move it around much later, actually. Maybe there's a little one down here, so it's a bit more matched up. And I want one coming up there. I think that's because I had that masked, actually. Let's see if this works better. Nope. Is it because I'm not perspective mode? No, it's just been awkward. Okay, fair enough. Well, Zbrush wins this one. So that's fine. I'm good with that. I'm just basically getting the shapes in. I'm not being too precious. And we'll have something like that. Okay, that's miles off. I'm not going to use that one. Alright, so we have these multi-meshes now in my original subdivision, in my original poly group model, whatever. So I just want to separate those out now, so I'm just going to go down to splits and group split. And that's going to give me basically, it's going to separate everything out. I had some really bad polygroups here. Unfortunately, I can't undo that now, but it doesn't matter because I made a copy of it. So I'm just going to delete all the stuff out I don't need. I want those, so I'm just going to merge those down. And I don't need that bit, so I'm just going to delete it, and I don't need that bit. And now we have that. So I'm just going to take this and just going to step it up a couple subdivisions, and very, very quickly and very loosely I'm just going to use one of the move tools. You notice I keep using Move Elastic rather than Move. They work slightly different. Move Elastic kind of has a bit of a fall off, and it tends to move the geometry around it rather than just its actual whatever's in the brush radius. This kind of works when working really fast because it means you can move more and keep the geometry alignment a little bit more flush. I can't see where that one's going, so I'm just going to turn on transparency. And I really need to pull some of this back. This went miles away. And for this I'm actually going to mask out some of that. I'm going to invert it, and I'm going to use my transform tools and pull it back that way. Soften the mask. To soften the mask, you control and click on the masked area. And just going to draw this in this way a little bit, just so we have a little bit of a little bit of something. And of course, if you were doing this yourself, you know, you'd add much more interesting, much more thought out shapes rather than just what I'm doing. And obviously, you probably just want to get them aligned and have some nice, interesting details on them, like vines, leaves, and moss and all that jazz. All the same, I'm demonstrating wrapping another mesh around another mesh, which is going to affect what I'm going to show you next. Let's just get this out of here. Where this one's going. So something like that. Cool. So we have now a beautiful tree. From what I'm imagining, this is exactly what I wanted in my head. I mean, it's not, but let's just say for shits and giggles that it is. This is my finished asset. I'm really happy with this. I've spent months and months and months doing this. I'm now absolutely excited with it. Now the next stage, I guess, is to do low poly, and I'm just going to save this to the desktop just for now so I don't lose anything. So yeah, this is almost like a game asset ready. So I'm really happy with it. Let's take this now and let's make the low poly, because why not? We've got this now. We might as well really quickly make the low poly while we're at it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to. I mean, all this is fine for baking. You can have all these separate. You can export them separately, or you can combine them. Whatever. You're going to get some seams. You're going to get some issues where it's not quite connected to the mesh properly. But let's just say this is fine for baking. So hopefully that's demonstrated some of the tools we can use. Now let's really, really quickly get something that I can actually put in engine really, really quickly. And Zbrush has some wonderful features for that. So I'm going to do what I did in the first place, and I'm just going to remesh this again. So what that's going to do is it's going to look at all this object, and it's going to mesh it all into one object. So I'm just going to turn the resolution up a little bit. I'm going to remesh it. And it's given us something. It's given us a uniformed, nice mesh. Now we can go along and we can do the reprojection. Now this is always a little bit awkward. It's always a little bit like trial and error, just changing some of these settings, seeing what works and what doesn't work. I think that worked quite well. A few issues here and there. Fortunately for this one, it doesn't particularly matter if we have some of these things going in and out, and I'll show you why in a second. So I'm just going to step it up again another resolution. I'm just going to project it. So we have something that's roughly about the same shape and size as the thing we had beforehand. And I think this is pretty accurate. I just want to try using the outer instead of the inner and see what happens. This could explode. No, it didn't do anything. Yeah, there we go. Step that down a bit. Oh, damn it. Alright, let's just say this is great. This is our lovely one mesh now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use the remesher tool in Zbrush. Now, the great thing about ZRemesher is that it's a very powerful tool in terms of being able to have your own customizability of it, as long as, as well as being pretty good just out the box. So you can see now up here we have our mesh, which is 68,000 polygons. Now, back in the old school way of doing it, before ZRemesher existed, what you could do is if you come up to Z plugin and Decimation Master, you can, you can process it, and you've got a little slider here about the percentage of polygons that you had to what you want to turn it into. So you can see there now it's turned our mesh into a 7,000 polygon mesh. You can see that like that. So I mean that's pretty low resolution. That could go in game right there. That's already a game asset. I'm quite happy with that. However, I don't want to use Decimation Master for this because it doesn't give you very good edge loops. As you can see, it's all very quads. And it says 7,000 up there, well actually in reality that's 14,000. But that's just another thing. So I'm just going to undo that. There we go. So I just want to clean up my polygroups a bit because they're a bit all over the place. I'm just going to make that one group. So, like I was saying with ZRemesher, out the box, let's just see what happens. There's a little slider here called Target Polygon Count. Excuse me while I have a drink of water. And I often find 5% is quite high, so I'm just going to pull this down and see what happens. This could go way too low. So it's going to take a little bit of time to process. It's going to have a little bit of a think about it. Has anyone here used ZRemesher by any chance? Yeah, a couple? Okay. I mean, I often found out that making the low poly was often more time consuming than making the high poly sometimes, just because of how accurate you needed it to be. But the more tools you have at your disposal to get something out really quickly, the better. So I did that, and it was a little bit high still, so I'm just going to use it again. Now, this might give me really bad topology, which I have a funny feeling it's going to do. But we'll fix that. Notice how this isn't reflecting what the high poly geometry is like. It's not perfect, but it's got all the shapes in the right places, so you can kind of get something from it. Now, I know that looks god-awful, so what we're going to do is, first of all, acknowledge that the out-of-the-box settings didn't work. I'm just going to turn on my other subgroups, and I'm just going to project that back. And hopefully that might give us a little bit of something that's closer to what it's supposed to be. We could go lower than this. Okay, that's not working. So, how do we now control ZRemesher a little bit more? That's not it. Well, what you can do is, first and foremost, is over here, in the brush settings, you have ZRemesher guides. Now, what that does is it allows you to hand paint topology. So I'm just going to find my edges, which I like, and kind of like the flow of things, and I'm literally just going to draw lines. And this is going to tell ZRemesher where to put the edge loops. It's a little bit difficult when it comes to the face, because I want to try and keep as much of the topology as I can in terms of having a facial structure. So I'm just going to go in a little bit here. I'm going to shrink my brush, and I'm just going to do this. That might screw up, but we'll find out. Again, it's all trial and error, just failing faster. I can't stress that enough. I'm just going to do something like that. Down here. I would probably take more care than what I'm doing, because this might actually cause problems later on. In fact, yeah, I'm going to get rid of that because that will cause problems. But yeah, just following the shape of your model as best as you can. Down something like that. Something like that. So I've done that way, and now I'm going to do the rings. Now, if there is a way, which I'm trying to think of how. Let me just try and remember. that. There is a way of doing like a ring around the object, but I can't remember now. It's a bit of a shortcut. I'll have to look it up sometime. Nope, that ain't it. Anyway, not important. I'm just gonna ring these around myself. So something like that. Again, I'm not going to worry about the back because that's not what's important in this demo. What is important is that I keep some of this because I want this detail here. I'm just going to bring around there, pull across there, connect those in the middle, and across there. You can already see that we're slowly building up, almost like the low poly wireframe, just like this. And hopefully this should be enough for Zremesh to now not give us any grief. What I might do in this instance as well is just do one around here, because I think we're going to lose some information there. Cool. Alright, let's put one around there as well, just a good measure. This may work, it may not, who knows. So now down here we have some settings. They're pretty good out the box again. The curve strength and the adaptive size is the two that you need to work with. The adaptive side is how much Zremesh just uses its own intelligence, and the curve strength is basically how much you're saying, follow my curves, basically. So this is one way of doing it. Now let's see what happens when we use Zremesh now, after we put in the new topology. It takes a little bit to calculate. I tried, but I failed. Mudbox just didn't sit very well with me. I was never much of a Maya person, and I think it was just a bit too much like Maya. But you know, it's not about the programs. If you have the art talent, you can use whatever program you want. No one cares what program you used. It's all about getting the final result. So if you use Mudbox and you're really good at it, well, then awesome. It's just I've never personally got along with it. Now we're still getting some problems with this, so I'm gonna step this down a little bit because I'm thinking that my topology might be a little bit too high, and I think there's something still funky going along with. No? Okay. Okay, let's try it from there. That's weird though, because that's not. Oh, never mind. Anyway, not important. Let's try and do this again from a low resolution mesh and see what happens here. So I want to be on Zremesh. No, it's fine actually. It's not a bad machine. I think what's slowing it down is also using two monitors. Yeah, and recording. Yeah. There we go. We have something a little bit more game friendly, shall we say? And you know what? That's not a million miles away from what we needed. We kind of have the edge loops roughly in the same position. Obviously, I would have taken a little bit longer if I was doing it myself. But you can kind of see, apart from a few issues, which we can address now, it's getting there. You know, it's not bad. You can then go along and smooth some of this out, find where there's the problems, and fix it from there. So what I really want is more information in the facial area than on the trunk area. So I'm just going to go back and we're going to undo my my thing. And Zremesh also has a wonderful way of using polypaint. Now, as you can see, if you read it here, you can tell it to use polypaint. So the way it works is if you come down to your polypaint settings, and if you colorize it, and I just want to colorize it white. So I'm going to turn Z add off and Z intensity off, and I am not going to have that brush on because that's going to cause problems. And I'm just going to change my material as well into something that we can see what we're doing with, perhaps the matte cat grey. Sorry, I'm having a moment. There we go. Okay, so at the moment my model is all white, and I'm going to paint on, and now it's all red. There we go. Okay. So the way it works is, when you're painting it, just painting the poly paint, white, Z remeasure ignores completely, and it uses either the curves or its intelligence to do it. If you paint it blue, it puts less polygon information there, and if you paint it red, it puts more polygon information there. So because I want more information around this area, I'm just going to sculpt in using a different brush. Maybe it's just a standard brush for this. Turn that off again. And I want RGB on. So I'm just gonna paint in this area red because I want a lot of detail in this facial area. I think this is going to be the key area. Now it's very sensitive. So I've got real red there, and I think I made a mistake. So I'm just going to pull this back. And I'm just going to make that a little bit less red. And I have lazy mouse on as well, which I don't really want right now, so I'm going to turn that off. There we go. I'm just going to build up a little bit more shade of a red there. And you can really just be quite loose with this again. And I'm just going to soften that off. Maybe paint in a little bit more white, really gently, just to get rid of some of the harsh edges. Something like that. And what I don't want is I really don't want much information, especially around the back, because I didn't even bother sculpting the back. So I'm just going to paint the back in blue. Something like that. Turn this up. And it's going to really just really not put many polygons there at all. And especially around the bottom as well, we don't need any polygons here. So I'm going to quickly do that. It's getting a little bit sluggish now for some reason. There we go. Something like that. And again, it's a little bit harsh right now, so I'm just going to find a slightly more neutral, a mid color. I'm just going to soften that down ever so slightly, just so we don't get such harsh transition. Something like that. So now when you go up to Z remeasure, you can say use poly paint, and the color density is it's just another slide to play with. The higher the setting, the more polygons and the less polygons it adds as a multiplier and divider. So I'm just going to go ahead now and I'm going to click Z remeasure again. So it's going to use my splines that I put in to guide where the UVs go, and it's also going to take the polygon, the poly paint information as to where to put polygons. Let's see what this looks like. Cool. So it's not perfect because my mesh wasn't perfect, but as you can see, you have a lot more nice detail where we want it. And now, when you look where we don't want it, there is very little information, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. If it wasn't for this little strange area here, I would say that is probably game worthy. Depending on how big the asset is, this could be 10,000 polygons. Maybe if it was big, it could be 20, 30,000 polygons. Who knows? So, yeah, hopefully that's kind of demonstrated a little bit that in a short time, I mean, it's been an hour and 10 minutes, we've gone from basically a cylinder and created the working high poly, which I'm good with that. That's good. That's a good game asset. So we've got the high poly and we've got the low poly, all in a very short space of time. And that's really it. Just really just sculpt as fast as you can. Just get stuff in. Don't be too precious. Really broad, loose strokes. just build it up as you go along. Realize that it's never going to be perfect, and it's all about iterating and just getting stuff in, seeing what works and what doesn't work, pulling it around. Don't even worry so much about the topology when you're doing the high poly. You can always retopologize it really quickly with just a couple of clicks of a button using either Remesh or perhaps even just using Dynamesh. It's all about trying to get that fidelity where you want it to be and going for the final product. And just as a bit of a side thing, this is one of my recent things I've done, and everything was done just in Zbrush, including the low poly, which is now in game. If anyone asks, you see this. But yeah, everything here was made out of just basic Z-spheres, basic geometry. Just building up shapes as I went along, really, and trying to get the broad concept in. I think the final file for this was something like 110 million polygons for the high poly model. This one, I think I was on it for about 3 weeks. But that was like, full-time, job. So every hour of every day I was working, basically. And it's not perfect. Like, even I know it's not perfect. Like, her knee's a bit funky if you look at it. And the feathers were an absolute nightmare, let me tell you. And they still don't look that great, but they worked as, what they were for. They were to give the impression of something being there. And it came out alright. Yeah, I think the pose on the character could have been a bit stronger. I mean, anatomy is definitely not my forte. In fact, I suck at anatomy. But it's good to do stuff out of your comfort zone occasionally and learn whatever, to keep progressing yourself as an artist. Okay. Yeah, I think that's it.